Next speaker is Madhu Mazumdar.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks to the organizers for inviting me. And thank you, everybody, for staying. Lunch is coming soon, so this will be quick. So I'm going to talk about issues of implementation. You already heard about design and measurement and analysis. My title on the brochure is Taking Stock, Making Changes, Assessing Awareness and Perspective, Surveying Practices, and Engaging Personnel Training Needs as Methods of Supporting Reproducibility in a Continuously Learning Health System. So I'll define some of these terms that might be new because this morning we mostly talked about preclinical and clinical research. So I'm from Icahn School of Medicine, and my background is biostatistics. Okay, so here's the outline of my talk. I'll provide you an introduction to the Mount Sinai Health System Data Warehouse, which is very typical and many institutions are now building it. Define healthcare delivery research, which is a little bit of a new term. That is most similar to clinical research, but there are some unique features to it. I'll make a case that the healthcare delivery research is expected to turn the health systems into continuously learning health system, which has its own definition. And since this is a new phenomenon, ensuring reproducibility is extremely important in this setting and probably can be achieved a little bit more easily because we are just starting. And it's very important because real decision-making is happening based on these findings. So hospital administrators, providers, patients are all using these findings to either choose hospitals or run the hospitals better or make a decision on the patient. So various guidelines for producing reproducibility are emerging, but implementation is still quite lacking because, as you heard many times, it's quite hard to achieve. So we have taken few steps towards implementation at this health system, and I'll tell you about those. Some of them are changing the models for recruitment, defining the project team in an expanding manner, have on-job training if people are coming in unprepared, as you heard, and allocate resources to it. And with that, I'm planning to propose a mixed method study where we will interview and survey our various stakeholders to assess their understanding of reproducibility and its repercussion, as well as engage them in this work. So this is New York City, and these 7 hospitals merged to create the health system in 2013. What happens when these health systems and various hospitals come together, that the numbers suddenly becomes very big. You have many number of patients, you have many providers, you have many trainees, certainly under the same umbrella, and that creates a unique opportunity to do this healthcare delivery research. So here I'm showing you some graphs. No need to really know the details here. The point I'll try to show you is that there are huge fluctuations within hospitals and huge variation between hospitals on any outcome you pick, especially when they first merge. So here I'm showing you data on heart failure readmissions, and as you will see, these 7 hospitals have very different patterns over time. Although when you see them all together in a system setting, it will seem like there is no variation. So those pictures are really to point out that healthcare delivery research is needed because part of these variabilities can be explained by the lack of evidence that is available about how to deliver care efficiently, consistently, and efficiently. And these evidence gaps impede decision-making in system-level practices and results in suboptimal outcomes and waste resources. So this healthcare delivery research term is coined to identify practices that would improve quality of care, improve patient safety, improve patient outcomes, and decrease cost. So what is the difference from the traditional clinical research? The primary difference is that it focuses heavily on system-level practices. Methodologically, there is really no difference. All the issues you heard about statistics are needed in this kind of research as well. Controlling biases, adjusting case mix becomes even more important because they are coming from different hospitals. Chances of these biases and case mix being different is higher. We have needs to be performed rapidly because it's in the setting of decision making, so that creates a little bit of stress. And findings, this probably is also a very big difference. The findings need to be implemented in practice right away. Because in clinical research, somebody writes the paper and somebody else picks it up. But when you are in a healthcare system and you are doing the research, you have the opportunity to put this in the practice and monitor to see if your results are actually showing the result, and tweaking and testing until the practice is effective. So since we have this check, sometimes mistakenly people think that, at the beginning we don't have to do that good a job and have everything reproducible and things like that because it will get caught. But the fact is, if you didn't do your job from the very beginning well, then you'll be wasting time because you might go in the wrong direction to begin with. So reproducibility is still very, very important in this setting. So let me give you the definition of the continuously learning health system. This is given by National Academy of Medicine. It says that science, informatics, incentive, and culture has to be aligned for continuous improvement and innovation, with best practices seamlessly embedded in the delivery process and new knowledge captured as an integral byproduct of the delivery process. So that really is the crux of it, that the data that's coming out of the healthcare delivery and you taking care of the patient is the data that will go into research. We are not collecting any new data. And here, that's what it's showing, that the informatics, the EMR systems that are coming through, those are the sources, only sources of research. You're putting your research question on top of that, and hopefully you will be able to align the incentives and the culture of the institution to make it happen. So this Institute of Healthcare Delivery Science that I'm building was initiated in August 2014 to be able to turn the Mount Sinai Health System, that merger of the 7 hospitals, into a continuously learning health system. So the resource that I have in our disposal is this Mount Sinai data warehouse. So what is that? Is a compilation of data coming from various sources. So you have this registration data from inpatient and outpatient setting. You then have the EMR system where the actual care and the billing process is happening for some of the things. You sometimes have some legacy EMR systems as well. There are many ancillary applications. So once somebody says EMR, seems like everything is being done in one, which is not the case. There are many other smaller systems that sometimes speak to the EMR and sometimes don't. But all those data also comes and falls in the data warehouse. And then you have these billing, if you're doing in a different software, and decision support, which are sort of the knowledge base that giving it at the point of care through certain electronic alert systems and things like that. All of these data then gets loaded to this design workshop, this data warehouse. And from there, you can either do cohort a query to see how many patients, how many providers you have in your system, or the Mount Sinai data warehouse personnel could do a query for you on specific to the research question that you are asking if you work with them enough to tell them what you need. Or sometimes data marts, which are subset of this data set, is also given to the heavy users who are repeatedly working with certain particular cohorts. So this is the data source, and as I've already told you, the numbers could be quite big and staggering, which could be an opportunity and sometimes tricky. The advantage of having this kind of a centralized unit is that it's compliant with all of the regulations. So de-identified data for clinical research could be done very quickly, and not too much of paperwork needs to happen. But if you want identified access, then you can also get that with an IRB-approved study. So my thinking was that since all data is centralized, data reproducibility practices will be easier to implement if the leadership and the personnel buy into it. So what I was finding that, we are part of few important studies that are funded by NIH and PCORI, like eMERGE Network, where we are trying to put genetics information into the EMR system. Or New York City, many of the hospital systems have gotten together and creating cohort of obese patients and things like that, funded by a PCORI grant. So in those kind of studies, since many institutions are involved and you need to have a standard practice of extracting data, there is a lot of discussion around that. And there, I think that the reproducibility practices are a little bit more, better followed, although we still have to see their reporting, which hasn't happened yet. But here I'm showing you the picture of PubMed search, where EHR-based publications are increasing quite fast now. And we are starting to contribute to that. And I was noticing that we are not doing such a good job, again, at reporting. So I would also argue that by, sometimes we only call research reproducibility. The reproducibility needs to be separated out from research, would be my point, because there are other reports, internal reports or external, that create bases for decision making that might not go to a journal publication, and reproducibility could very much be important there because clinical decision and administrative decisions are being made. There are quality metrics that nationally gets submitted on the basis of which patients decide whether this hospital has lower complication rates and therefore I will get my surgery there. For those data, again, you get summary statistics, but you many times don't actually get the data. So all of the practices you heard, I would argue that for these reports also, reproducibility is an important thing to achieve. So since we were starting new, I really was looking for guidance and wanted to have the best guide implemented in our system. So this is the one we have decided to follow for ensuring data reproducibility. So this guide comes from EDF Forum Community publications, and this is a compilation of at least 10, 12 institutions who have very big data warehouse system and have some experience with that. And they give a 9-point or 12-point, I haven't counted, detailed guide of how to go about doing that. So, first, it talks about taking, again, the evidence-based approach. You heard Dr. Dickerson talked about PICO, the population intervention comparator and outcome. Because it's EMR data and the patients are coming back again and again, two more things needs to be added, the T and the S, the timing and the setting. If it's an inpatient versus an emergency setting, that might be different. So they go through a very good discussion about how to ensure that your questions have that. There are 5 or so points that you need to ensure for checking data and validating data. And a lot of details have been given, but more details are needed, really how to do it. Because the users are really wanting to do the right thing, but they are not, they're getting lost in many, many publications that are coming out saying things are not working, but not really saying this is how to do it. This guideline also talked about standardized reporting methods, provide details of data source, provenance, and things like that. After this paper, actually, a record guideline has come. This is a reporting guideline for routinely collected health data, which is exactly where we are. And this guideline does a very good job of, again, working on top of the Strobe guideline, which used to be the reporting guideline for observational study, but gives you at least another 8 things to report in terms of where your data is shared, how did you do the validation, what national gold standard you use to validate the data, and things like that. So this really helps in starting the conversation, because these data warehouse folks are informaticians, computer scientists, a little bit different than the data managers we used to have in our team as a clinical trialist or a clinical researchers. And having this outside pressure that these checklists have to be filled when we go for a publication or writing a report for public helps in increasing or the level of discussion and making sure that everything is documented. And then it also encourages to build a team with informaticians who have a different angle of figuring out whether the whole EMR system is somewhat biased. So this is the guideline that we are following for data reproducibility, and I'll tell you later the barriers of many kind that we are facing. For the statistical reproducibility, this is the same slide that Dr. Stoughton showed you. This was based on one of the workshops that was done in 2015 and published in 2016. These are not new issues to the statisticians. We have been talking about it and critiquing each other on all of these topics many times. American Statistical Association, again, has a new guideline about p-value and when to call what. So I think that this will be here to stay, and we can improve training of our students and our clinicians and other data analyst fields that are emerging. But I really think that writing a protocol down of everything that you're going to do, and then everything you actually did, and keeping track of all that, which was promoted by Dr. Don Berry in this workshop, and has a nice JNCI commentary, really giving details of how to keep log and how he himself does, is a very good guide where we can at least see what we did and where we went wrong, and critiquing each other. He also recommends that letting the journal know that, this paper, I'm not sharing the data, but I have this log available to you if anybody wants to look at it. Because many times after doing the data analysis, we ourselves forget whether we have done a log transformation or a square root transformation. So writing every step is something that probably is the only way the statistical reproducibility could be enhanced. For the computational reproducibility, we are really following the same workshop. Dr. Roger Peng, who is from Johns Hopkins, has given us this picture where he's saying that publication only is not reproducible. Full replication is the gold standard, but we can go in the middle. We can share the code, we can share the code and the data, and we can share linked and executable code and data. And that's really the way somebody can really reproduce your work, because if I have to again write the full code and critique you, then as you heard from Dr. Allison, nobody has time for it anymore. Now, what has really been helpful that Dr. Peng has also gone in and created a Coursera course at a very user-friendly level and really taught how to do simple open source coding on this issue. And I would really, I'm using this for all of our staff training, and more courses of this kind, I think, might be a solution to some of the training issues that we are talking about, because we cannot add another year of statistics, as you heard. So having on-job training through these courses might be a solution. So these are the things that we kind of said we are new, we are going to start on the right foot, we have these guidelines already emerging from the experts in the field. Many of you are in the audience, so thanks for that material. So how do we do that? Is it easy enough to follow? What we realized that now the number of stakeholders are much bigger, and the EMR data is really a different kind of data than we were used to. So the conversation and the language barrier between different people are very big. Also, the EMR companies don't make it easy. So if you are not appointed by an IT department, or you haven't gone for an EPIC EMR certification, you can't even look at the EPIC screen. So if you didn't know how the data was emerging, in what setting, how the doctor was filling it, there is a heavy chance of you going wrong. Blood pressure for a patient who is coming in to be diagnosed for hypertension will be very different than a blood pressure when you're coming for a general checkup. So you really need to know the setting. You need to know what the user was seeing as a screen when they were talking to the patients. So the solution that we have come up with, that we are jointly appointing personnel now, be it a statistician, be it an informatician, be it a social scientist, anything. We are jointly appointing between the Institute of Research and various kind of entities that we need to work with, and that's helping us make it a little bit easier. We are expanding the project team size and its coordination with eye towards reproducible products. We are not even calling it reproducible research anymore, because not everything we do is necessarily research. And then under the Institute, we are creating these analytic core resources that will be helping in the project development stage. Because many of these projects are quality improvement projects or process improvement projects, and administrators think that they can handle it, because this is just incidence of infection over time, and you don't really need a statistician for that. So, but we are just saying, this is available to you if you want to come and talk. We are also making services available from the analytic core for post-publication, and when I say publication, not necessarily journal publication, post-publication of reports, to make it, transfer it to a reproducible report. Because we realize that not everybody will be able to do this dynamic reporting and programming as is being preached by the experts. And lastly, we really felt that so much is being talked about reproducibility on this side. On the hospital side, nobody reads those papers. That's not the discussion they're having. So creating a journal club series where we can join by WebEx and things like that, just to read the papers that came out that week about reproducibility. has helped us in making people aware that this is a big issue and that we could be leader in it if we implement these things well. So those are a few of the changes that were easier to do, and we already did that. These are the ones that are under planning. So the first one, I'm developing a training module on issues related to reproducibility and lobbying it to make it mandatory, just like HIPAA training. It's not going to solve everything, but I think that awareness of everybody working, it's not just the researcher or not just the nurses or not just the providers, everybody, technicians, the ones that needed to be taken HIPAA training or trainings like that. So if we could have 20 questions with various scenarios, like Dr. Allison showed, given to them at the beginning of their joining the institution, I think that would be an awareness that might be there to stay, and some booster courses from there. We are also training analysts in open source software and dynamic reporting, because we are realizing even statisticians really don't use open source. And partly the reason being that physicians are being trained in Stata and SPSS and things like that, and we want to collaborate with them. So applied statisticians, after they come out of school, they become a proprietary software user and are not open source users anymore. So many of the statisticians need that training, and that training, I would say, either could be Coursera kind of courses or could be on the job of different kind. We are also realizing that these are really patient data, and there will be a big barrier to making this public. So we are first starting with an institutional repository and saying, let's just submit it within institution and let each other try to reproduce our studies and our reports. And then let's make a data use agreement process easier, so that if there is a publication, if there is a report, we already are ready with the material when they ask. Because fact is, when somebody asks and an author writes you a letter, you are really not ready because you don't have the material and you have your day job there, so you're not really responding to them many times out of embarrassment. So this, I think, would be a solution and doesn't have to move mountain to do this. Training users on the existence of external repositories and submission process is another thing that is very important, because as you heard, people who are working and on the job many times are a little bit out of the technology movement that's going on, and training them or helping them is another avenue for improving. And then, of course, having dialogue with institutional leaders about value of practicing reproducibility and the investment that it will take, and that this will not be coming from grants necessarily. And so maybe fundraising needs to be done, because reproducibility is an issue that foundations and others might be responding to well. So these are the changes that we are under planning right now. So what are the barriers? There are many barriers, of course, but these are some of the big ones. As you heard again and again, shortage of well-trained personnel is a big issue. Typically, the master statistician, master computer scientist, that level of personnel really do this kind of work, and there has been an extreme shortage of well-trained personnel. People are coming in with master's degree, but somehow the quality has gone down. Their number of courses they're taking is less, or they're not hearing these issues. The statistics, I can say for sure, I'm being very surprised that they have a master's. But this can be solved if the material of the personnel is good, on-job training, as we talked about, which we used to do anyway. It needs to be strengthened a little bit more. Interdisciplinary teams, personnel, again, speak their background language. As the teams are getting bigger, interdisciplinary work just takes a long time. Team building is one of the things that we have to give time to and let people learn from each other. But it is at odds with the expectation of healthcare system setting, where I showed you that the things need to be done in a compressed way. Open source, R, Python, these things, as I mentioned, are not utilized by the data analyst and applied statistician. And this was very consciously done, because Clinical Translational Science Center Award really popularized the masters in clinical investigations and asked us to train our collaborators in those software. And these were the softwares that were picked at that time. So statisticians also moved to them. So more what should I say, development with these softwares and how to make things reproducible there could be also some movement that needs to happen. Similarly, editors like LaTeX are marked down, and knitting program like Sweave and Knitter are also not easy to use for these folks. And Word is universally used, and which is not a software that's dynamic reporting. So these are the kind of things where we need to work on, and I'm hoping that many of the other talks probably will give me some of the innovations that are already happening to replace these things. So many other challenges, but the fact is all of them are solvable challenges. They're not insurmountable. So with that, I thought that creating a mixed method study where we take stock of where we are at right now, and then we make changes, but we, as we are doing the assessment, we engage all the people in thinking about it, would be a good way to get more ideas than what I have observed myself and tried to changing. So we have been guided by 3 existing surveys in this kind of field. Everybody knows about the Nature survey, where reproducibility crisis is detected by 70% of the folks who have taken it. Again, because Nature has given the questionnaire and the raw data to the users, it has been very easy for us to learn from it and guide our survey through that. Wellcome Trust has done a data sharing and data governance survey. Pretty much, that was mostly for the cohort data, not EMR data, but coming with the same conclusion that everybody wants to share, they just don't have enough resources to do it, and not enough incentive in their tenure process to spend time on that. So that survey also is shared publicly and has been very valuable. CTSA, the Clinical Translational Science Centers, they have done a survey in 2012 to really show that these data warehouse and EMR systems are becoming quite common. 90% of the institutions that belong to CTSA are actually having data warehouse. So this is a slightly different field than the preclinical clinical, but chances of going wrong could be even more here. And so doing a survey like this and interview around these questions, making people aware of the impact of non-reproducibility, perspective and interest in changing culture, because this is really cultural, and then understanding what processes for data extraction, quality check, analysis and reporting they currently have, and then seeing where we can improve the training to make this happen. So I do have a draft survey of the questionnaire, and I'll welcome all of you to talk to me if you wanted your institution to get involved or just provide comments. It will be very useful. We are trying to engage as a large stakeholder group we can. So these are the ones that are important to us. Most of them are not researchers. Most of them are practitioners and frontline providers. But they all need to understand that the pain they are going through by putting the data in Epic or putting the data in different systems, why that needs to be in a structured field, and how they need to know that this data is actually being used for goodness of their patients and beyond. So all of those issues we are hoping to bring out through the interviews, and hopefully that will have an impact. We also have some external partners. So the same CTSA informatics group has shown interest in administering our survey to all of the CTSA institutes, because their questionnaire did not have any question about reproducibility. Healthcare Data Analytics Association, members of which really are the one who work in data warehouse companies and set up the data warehouse for various academic health centers, are also interested in administering this questionnaire. So who is doing all the work? These are the people from the Institute of Healthcare Delivery Science, and as you will notice, everybody is a quantitative or qualitative scientist of different kind, and so when we say quantitative scientists nowadays, the spectrum is getting bigger and bigger, and we have been lucky to find some of the very good ones. I also direct the cancer biostatistics course, so we are using similar principles and also working the same thing in the preclinical and clinical setting, but there the awareness is much more because this discussion has been happening. And here primarily all the people are statisticians. The collaborating leaders that are really taking lead, luckily, is the director of the data warehouse. She's very much interested in putting the right process because they realized that they got started with the data warehouse very quickly and were not aware of all the issues and wants to correct everything that needs to be corrected if we can figure out what they are. Anatine Gillians has run an NHLVI-funded clinical research center for a long time, and she's one of the leaders who is also very helpful in trying to change culture. Dr. McIntosh is the director of Center for Biomedical Informatics at WashU. She's our liaison for the CTSA initiative, where they will use our survey and bring us the goods. So here are the references. These are the ones that defines the learning healthcare system. This one I wanted to point out. This is Dr. McIntosh's work, where she's putting a framework for assessing if EMR-based publications can be reproduced. So this is a software she's developing for automating searches of the publication to see if there is enough information in the research and design. So hopefully, if we can train the software right, Dr. Allison doesn't have to do it by hand. Maybe some of the burden could go to the software. So far, she has only created the framework using 40 publications and some inter-reliability testing. She has shared it at GitHub. You should look that up. But I think this could be a very useful tool if we could successfully build it. Here are the 3 recommended guidelines that I said I have chosen to be the best one to follow right now. And it has been useful in our institution to have just 3 things to read, rather than everything that came before that. Also, these are the 3 surveys that I showed you have been useful for us. So I would like to end by saying that we have a long way to go, and this is a new field, but we feel that we have had a good start. And so I'll take questions, but continue the conversation with me through email as you please. Thank you very much.